Hello and welcome to World News by Denis Halandzovskyi. If you value calm, precise BBC-style analysis of global events, culture and geopolitics, please subscribe, leave a comment and support the channel. Your engagement helps us grow and keep delivering thoughtful, fact-based content. Today, we turn to a renewed international discussion that places Ukraine's cultural identity at the center of global attention. It concerns Kazimir Malevich, one of the most influential artists of the 20th century, and the pressing question, who can rightfully claim his artistic legacy? Kazimir Malevich remains among the most recognized names in modern art. His work transformed European visual language. His founding of Suprematism reshaped abstract art for generations. Yet, more than a century after his most revolutionary works, one question continues to emerge. Where and to whom does Malevich truly belong? Born in 1879 in Kyiv, then part of the Russian Empire, Malevich grew up in a region shaped by Ukrainian village life, rural crafts, and aesthetic traditions. His parents were ethnically Polish, living in a multicultural milieu. The early influences of Ukrainian rural visual culture, folk art, and traditional patterns would later echo, abstracted, and reimagined in his mature artistic language. These formative experiences are deeply relevant, yet have often been overshadowed in mainstream art history. For much of the 20th century, especially during the Soviet era, Malevich was widely presented as a Russian avant-garde artist. This classification was reinforced by Soviet cultural policy and adopted in Western museums, academic publications, and reference works. The result was a simplified and, many argue, misleading narrative that ignored the complex ethnic, cultural, and geographical layers that shaped his identity. In recent years, particularly after Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, the international art community has begun to reconsider these inherited labels. Scholars, curators, and cultural institutions are increasingly aware that artists like Malevich came from regions historically absorbed into imperial structures and that their true origins deserve recognition. As a result, terms such as Ukrainian-born, Ukrainian avant-garde, or Ukrainian-born artist of Polish heritage have begun to appear in contemporary art discourse. Malevich himself embodied a multicultural identity. He spoke several languages, including Ukrainian. His correspondence sometimes reflected this linguistic and cultural diversity. More importantly, his early exposure to Ukrainian rural aesthetics, from ornate household objects to embroidered fabrics and folk motifs, informed his visual sensibility. In Malevich's mature works, with their focus on geometry, color, and spiritual abstraction, one can trace echoes of those early impressions, transformed through the lens of avant-garde art. Recognizing these influences is not an attempt at rewriting history, but at enriching it, acknowledging complexity, diversity, and the true roots of European modernism. The re-evaluation of Malevich's identity is not solely driven by Ukrainian scholarship. Many Western art historians argue that the long-standing classification of Malevich as Russian was the result of political realities of the 20th century, not cultural truth. With changing times and renewed sensitivity to historically marginalized identities, a more nuanced view of heritage is gaining ground. Today, international museums and art institutions increasingly adjust their catalog entries and descriptions. The shift reflects a broader awareness that imperial structures once erased or subdued distinct cultural identities, and that restoring those identities is essential for historical justice and cultural integrity. The debate over Malevich's identity has intensified not only because of academic curiosity, but because cultural heritage has become a critical arena in contemporary geopolitics. Ukraine's effort to reclaim artists whose identities were previously appropriated or misrepresented is part of a broader struggle for recognition, amplified by war, occupation, and attempts at cultural erasure. Malevich's case is particularly significant because of his global stature. He is not a marginal figure, but one of the foundational artists of the modern era. This re-evaluation matters for several reasons. It challenges long-standing narratives shaped by imperial frameworks. Under the Russian Empire and later the Soviet Union, cultural achievements from territories like Ukraine were often absorbed under a broader Russian identity. Reassessing Malevich's origins is part of dismantling that legacy, It underscores the importance of birthplace and early cultural influence. Malevich developed his worldview in a Kyiv region defined by overlapping identities: Ukrainian, Polish, Jewish, and more. Recognizing this complexity enriches the history of modern art rather than diminishing it. It emphasizes institutional responsibility. Museums and academic organizations are increasingly expected to confront the historical contexts in which artists lived. In Malevich's case, this means acknowledging that he operated under imperial and Soviet constraints, often facing censorship, suppression, and political pressure. Recognizing his true origins restores historical accuracy and honors his real background. It supports Ukraine's cultural revival. As the country continues to defend its sovereignty against aggression, preserving and clarifying cultural heritage becomes essential. Recognizing Malevich's Ukrainian roots is a symbolic yet powerful act, a statement of continuity, resilience, and national dignity. It reminds us that culture and identity are political. In times of war and aggression, ownership of memory matters. Who defines cultural heritage? Who tells the story? As Western institutions adjust their narratives, Ukraine's cultural identity gains clarity and strength, and the global community begins to see Eastern European art through a more honest lens. In this sense, Malevich becomes more than an artist. He becomes a symbol of how culture intersects with politics, memory, and the fight for truth. Thank you for watching. You've been on World News by Denis Halandzovskyi. If you found this discussion insightful, please subscribe, leave a comment, and share your thoughts. Your voice helps keep balanced, fact-based analysis alive. See you in the next episode. And as always, stay informed, stay thoughtful, and support Ukraine.